So, welcome to the Charlie Paparelli Show. I'm Charlie Paparelli, and I've been a 25 year investor, angel investor in the Atlanta technology community. And as such, I have talked to hundreds of entrepreneurs, and I have learned so much about starting companies and building technology companies. And to that end, we have a great guest today in Dan Ciprari. Dan is now 6 years, going to his seventh year, with a company called Pointivo, and Dan he partnered with a PhD from Georgia Tech, who had an amazing technology but would apply to multiple markets. Dan, coming in as the business executive and CEO, is his job was to find out what or discover what was the best market or markets for them to focus on to get the greatest value from this technology. Dan is a friend. He's also one of the more insightful people that I know and one of the more thoughtful people I know. His background is comes from consulting, and he became an executive with a large, fast-growing startup, only to discover pretty early on in his career that he was truly an entrepreneur and went through, got his master's from Georgia Tech, and eventually then moved to the Advanced Technology Development Center, and then finally with Pointivo and his new partner and his new opportunity. So, Dan, I'm so glad that you're here with us. Let me get you on screen.
Hey, Charlie. Good to see you again.
And this is great to have you here. I noticed that you were, and I didn't know this about you, we've never talked about it, but that you went to UNC. Are you from
I did.
North Carolina?
No, I'm from Atlanta.
Oh, you
It was
are.
it was between Tech and UNC, and I was going to med school, and I wanted to go somewhere much easier, so I went to UNC instead of Tech.
I think I do remember that you said that you
Yeah,
went to med school. Oh, you were going to
yeah.
go. You were
I
going to
was
go.
going to go. I did not go, and that's one of the reasons I got the master's at Georgia Tech because I always did want to go to Georgia Tech.
Okay. Well, why didn't you go to Georgia Tech to start with?
Man, it's hard. I knew I was going to go to med school. I wanted to go enjoy my 4 years of college.
It's funny. I have
So,
a friend who graduated from Georgia Tech, and he has a daughter who wanted to go to med school, and he said, "Don't go to Georgia Tech."
right.
And
I've heard all
I
those
said,
things.
"Why did you do that?" He says, "I wanted her to make sure that she had really good grades so she would get into med school."
Yeah, that
So
was
she
part of
went
it.
to Fordham instead.
That's funny. I had family that gone to Tech. My dad went to Tech, and I knew a lot about Tech, and I have a lot of respect for the school. But just for what I wanted to do in prepping for med school, UNC was a good place to do that. And UNC has great med school too, so it would have been a good feeder for that if I ended up going to med school.
But your undergrad was it? Did I see that it was in economics?
It was that was a placeholder degree. I was actually so it was pre med economics and pre computer science. So
Wow.
I went into school with a lot of credits, and so all my electives were computer science and pre med.
How many majors did you graduate with?
Just one. You couldn't actually. They didn't have a minor there, so it was just enough classes that I could get into med school and enough classes that could qualify for graduate school in computer science.
Why did you decide
So
against med school?
so interesting. I would my mom had wanted someone to go to Harvard. That was just a thing, and I don't know why. But so sophomore year, this was late '80s, early in the computer age, and Mac had just come out, and she wanted someone to go. So I went to summer school to Harvard after my sophomore year of college, and it was awesome. It was a great experience. It was all computers, and I hadn't really done. I had a Mac earlier on and learned how to program a little bit, but this was all about programming and my first real exposure to it. And I was blown away about what could be done. And so I came back to UNC and took every computer science course offered my junior and senior year. But I'd also done all the pre-med. So when it came time, I took the MCATs and I had med school applications in hand that were long. And I did fine in MCATs. In Anderson Consulting, I saw a one-page ad for Anderson Consulting in the newspaper, and I didn't even know who they were. And when I talked to them, they said, we're going to teach you how to program, which I already know how to do. And then we're going to bring you into all these different environments where you get to learn all these things, this stuff about computer science. And I said, wow, they're going to pay me to do that. And that was the only interview I had, and the only interview I had at all. And I put
Wow.
med school aside and started at Anderson
What
Consulting.
caught your eye? What interested you with? And you said I saw this ad, and so I just called them.
It was a full page ad, in the school newspaper saying, "Hey, we're coming on campus to interview." And I didn't plan to interview anywhere because I was going to go to med school. And I said, "Well, let me just go try it out, given that it's in the computer science area." And
Yeah.
and when it couldn't have been a better start of a career for me. Like it was absolutely the
It
right move.
sounds like your was your father in medicine?
No, he was in sales.
He was in sales.
Yeah.
Because it's like you said, I didn't know anything about Anderson Consulting. That tells me. See, I came from a background where my father wasn't in business, so I didn't know anything about business. But
Mhm.
clearly, you knew something about business.
Well, I knew a lot about sales. My dad and he had played golf with a lot of people that were doctors, and so that's how I probably got excited about that. And I saw some surgeries because he had friends who were doctors, and so that's what drove my interest. I think is just the experience of my dad's friends and why I wanted to be a doctor. And it was challenge. I thought it'd be challenging, but when I got the bug on the computer science side, it was great. Next, and Anderson was just really the perfect starting job. Like I still wish it was the same. I would love for my kids to start there.
No kidding. Why is that?
Because it
Because
was
I've
it
heard
was
some guys that came out of that. They came to me that wanted to start companies, and they felt like they were just stuck in the grind, if you will. It's
yeah
interesting that
back
you look
in
back on it so fondly. I think I read in your background that you were with them for 5 years almost.
yeah
Yeah,
yeah
so
right
that's a pretty big commitment.
yeah but I don't know with the people you were talking about when they were there because mine was the model was before they broke out and became a public company but the model was they hire 100 people in Atlanta offices, pretty much
Yeah,
all the offices. They did this, hire 100 people, all coming out of school. Most of them didn't have computer science background. They taught them COBOL all the time. I was, and I had already had a lot of experience. And then they teach you structure, processes, how to be professional. I learned how to be professional there, and everything's so structured that you had the senior manager who was mentoring the manager mentoring the senior mentoring the staff, and so you really had a lot of experience and mentorship. And I thought it was just a great way to start, especially coming out of college when you didn't really know how to run a business or do anything. And then you
that's
get to go
interesting. You bring
places
that
for
up,
six
though.
to 9 months, and then you change. So
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because you get a lot of people, entrepreneurs that start and they've never had any of that formal corporate background, right? And
yeah,
so I remember I came out being a CPA and then worked in a startup, and then we sold out 6 years later, or 5 years later, and then I did a 8 year run with corporations, and I learned so
yeah,
much about the discipline around running a business, how to do it properly,
yeah.
how to do forecasts, how to report to a boss, how to be in a board meeting, how to be a boss.
Yeah.
It's just incredible how many smart people in corporations, and a lot of entrepreneurs sort of poo poo that, but I'll tell you, man, it
I'm with
was
you.
invaluable to me in my career, and I can see you're appreciating it too.
Completely. And if people ask whether you should start a job out of college, I'm like, well, I mean, sure, obviously people have done, there's examples that are very successful, but I cannot imagine me starting something right out of college. Like there was so much I had to learn before I felt like I was capable of that.
Well, you
Maybe it would
learned
have
it.
been okay, but
One of the things that I always looked at is the best entrepreneurs that I ever invested in were guys that were sort of in there between 35 and 37 years old. Now, I
hmm,
started way back when I was 22, and here I am saying those are the people that I had the most success with. Okay. And you started, I guess, really your first entrepreneurial venture was what, at 27 or so?
probably about 26.
26,
Yeah.
26, right. And so, but you had this corporate background, which I think put you at a distinct advantage. I remember still having a conversation with this guy that had an MBA that joined our team. And I said, he said, we need to make sure we get our strategy and tactics down. And I still remember looking back saying, what's a strategy
Right.
and what's a tactic? And I was probably 25 at the time, and I still didn't understand what he was talking about. That's how far off I was.
Right.
Never mind understanding how to set up a payroll system.
Right.
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 But
You learn how to fake it till you make it. So
yeah,
it's
right.
definitely in the consulting world
Well,
and
how
many
did
of those
you? So
experiences.
when you look back, tell me some of the things that you learned that stick with you that you learned sort of from the Anderson Consulting days that took you and made Dan, whose Dan is now, an executive, and an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's probably saying a lot to say it made me, but I'll tell you the things that I remember fondly about it from a business perspective is it is about the process. Of, I mean, little things like just an Excel spreadsheet and the importance of the details and the structure and when a partner sees your work and says, wait, that looks like crap. Why didn't you do these 4 things? I'm like, you know what? You're right. It makes it much better. And that because there was a sense of senior relationship, like I wanted that feedback and I was expected it, and it had impression on me. And so, not always in a position where it's just natural part of course that you're going to get that feedback and improve. So I love that side of it. The training was they wanted you to be well-rounded. And so you went through 3 weeks of software skills and development, and then you had a whole summer of training. And then you had called green books where you had to do all kinds of other training. I can't remember, it was at least a few weeks a year. You had to learn about businesses or different industries. It was just really an emphasis on growing and training, which I thought was great. And then just professionalism.
How to deal with customers.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
a lot of
coming out of
structure,
UNC
right? So
with your degrees, like you said, I knew how to program, but and I knew economics, but I did. Did you ever see a customer?
Yeah, so I mean that's a lot about the structure, right? You're as a staff person coming on, you're one of 50 on a project, and you're probably not dealing with the customers as much. The seniors were doing it, and you're watching them. They learned from the managers, and they learned from senior managers. So I think a lot of that. But I worked in high school, so I had a lot of customer interaction.
Oh, you did?
I did.
What'd you do in high school?
Started my first job was when I was 11, actually.
I just wrote about that. Were you a newspaper boy too, or what?
No.
What did you do?
I worked at a pizza and sub shop.
Oh, you did.
When I was 11. Yeah, started as a bus boy, and then I was making sandwiches and working the cash register, which is way too young at 12, by the way. Like you shouldn't do that, but back in the day, it didn't matter.
So what got you to the point where you said, it's time for me to, since you loved Anderson Consulting, what got you to the point where you said, okay, it's time for me to move on to my next goal in life? That's
really
a
around
big decision,
opportunities.
because now 5 years, you're a senior guy, and they're already talking to you about at some point another few years and your partner, right? And then they got you for life.
Yeah, a little longer than that. But it's not unusual for people to leave. Like at Anderson, it was not unusual for people to leave at different stages. Very few. It was a pyramid, so you had a lot of staff, and then very few managers, and then very few senior managers, and not very many partners. And so it wasn't unusual. But it all came down to the opportunity and the situation we're in. And I had, for me, I'd become an expert in a certain area. Discipline was around database technologies and data management, just because of the experience of the projects I had done. And though Sybase, which was a database company back in the day, they were starting a consulting practice in Atlanta. And so they knew I was an expert in their systems. They called me. So it was like an easy step into more of an entrepreneurial role, because it was a new group figuring out consulting, but very specialized. And so it was a bit of an easy step for me.
And you weren't, at the time, you weren't married.
I was not.
Right.
No.
So that makes it even easier, right? I mean, being single, sort of your own man.
I mean, I was probably 25, 26 doing that. And then I was put on a project with 300 people. It was a big cellular technology project where 300 people with PwC, Accenture, HP, and I was the only Sybase representative. But it was all based on Sybase technology. So I was on
you didn't miss a beat. Your income actually increased.
Of course, yeah.
When it went there.
But, I mean, I would
call it Sybase put you in business, is what happened.
Yeah, it definitely set me up to be in the right place. Absolutely.
Okay.
And I mean, I did them well, right? The salesperson gave me lots of gifts because we sold a ton of Sybase technology there. And I mean, I wasn't selling it, but just the fact that it was successful, I got credit for helping. So she was very happy with me. But that's where I met my co-founders, my first company. Like I was a partner or senior manager at Accenture, and the senior person at HP. We had proven ourselves both from a technology standpoint, delivery, respect within the organization. And so the 3 of us formed a consulting company. We picked the 7 best people on the project and sold them right back to the project. So we basically formed it was opportunity to do it. Everyone was happy.
Who were those people working for that were on the project before they came working for you and went back on the project?
Either PwC, Accenture, or other groups.
So why'd they join you?
To be start of a new startup that was specialized in what we were doing, really around large system architecture. And this was 95. And so think about that was pre-internet really. And so large system architecture that became large internet architecture. So we were very fortunate to build a group of people that were very specialized in how to build applications in an internet age before the internet started or really became big. And
When
so we
you
picked the
started
right
that
time
thing, when you brought all those people together, what was your vision at the time? Was it simply to just make more money doing what you kind
to.
of love doing, or was there something bigger than that in mind?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because you're
Definitely
young,
the
right?
money.
I mean, you're
Yeah.
sitting there and
Oh,
it's like, cool, I got my own thing now,
yeah.
huh?
Well, so there's three of us. The partner that probably came up with the idea, Tom, was he was probably 40s, so he was a little bit
Oh, he
older.
was an old guy.
Um, yeah, he was that. Yes, and
When
Paul
you're
was a couple years.
25, 40 is an old guy, right?
Yeah, you know what? He might have been only 35, but I probably thought he was 40. Right? That's how that works. um, he truly might have been only 35.
was he was
But
he a was he an Anderson guy?
he was HP.
He was an
He,
HP guy.
he was
So
HP, and
you
he
met
had the
him when you were
relationship.
doing the Sybase consulting.
Yeah, on this project, all on this project.
Okay, good. Okay.
It was a 2-year project, and year into it, he had the relationship at the senior level with the client, and then the Anderson senior manager was technically very qualified and well respected, and I was very technically qualified and well respected. And so Tom probably picked the team. Maybe that's how it happened. I can't remember. But the idea was we were going to build something that was going to bring the best people together and specialize and not just be on that project and do our own thing. And so it was an easy decision, I thought, at that
Well, then
time.
let me take it back a little bit. When the Sybase rep told you, well, you can kind of do your own thing here, right? You could just work with me. Did you have any sort of idea that, I mean, you could say, oh, that was my first step into being an entrepreneur. Yet you weren't an entrepreneur. You're a contractor, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
that's all you were
Absolutely.
doing. Did you have
Yeah.
sort of was that something, if you think about being an entrepreneur, I mean, you've been following this. We're going to get into it, but you've been an entrepreneur for quite a while now.
Wow. Yeah.
At some point you have to become one, right? That
Yeah.
wasn't the point you became one. Did you dream of being your own entrepreneur and being your own business prior to that?
Not
Or did you
really.
always see
I mean,
yourself as sort of like your dad, being a sort of a corporate guy?
yeah, well, my dad played golf 6 days a week and worked about an hour and a half a day, so I definitely am not my dad.
Alive.
Yeah, yeah, he played golf all the
Well, how
time.
did you
So
miss that one?
I know, I know. So I don't know where I picked up the other side of it because that's truly what I saw growing up. But what I did see from my dad is he had relationships. Like the reason he could work an hour and a half a day was because when they had to solve a problem, he had great people. When they had to solve a problem, they came to him, and he made quick decisions and would direct people, and then everything went on. And so, and I knew whenever we got lots of deals and tickets and other, game tickets, and all you had to do is call someone, and everyone wanted to do a favor for him. And so and that only comes from building relationships and people liking you over time. And that's what he had done. And he was at a point in his life. At that point, I'm the youngest child, so at that point he was living the easy life. But back to the
So
question.
how did you? Yeah. So how did you go from okay? So I'm going to be a contractor. Did you think you're going to be like? What did that mean to you? I mean, so I'm leaving Anderson. I keep saying Accenture. I'm leaving Anderson. It became Accenture. I'm leaving Anderson. I don't understand. Were you just going to stay as a contractor and say, "Ah, make a lot of money doing this," or was it?
Yeah,
Did you
but
really see it
remember,
as sort of a waypoint for you?
yeah, but I wasn't a contractor. I was an employee of Sybase. And so
Oh, I'm sorry.
right. Yeah, no, I was an employee of Sybase, the consulting side of Sybase. We had started the consulting division
I
in
missed
Atlanta.
that. I missed
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Okay.
So I just went from being a consultant at Anderson to being a consultant for Sybase, which is just more of a technical consultant. And for me, that was easy because it was rather than being a generalist at Anderson and part of a big group. Now I was a specialist
Yeah.
and one of the early ones in the office. It just so happened that the only project I did was for this. I got put right on a big project, just like I was like
Okay.
at Anderson, but I was with Sybase.
So what drew
And
you to
so
this old guy?
what's that?
What drew you to the 40-year-old guy?
Yeah, no, I mean, it came down to the fact that we had the opportunity to do something on our own. It wasn't very different the first 3 months because we'd spent probably a year on the project, and I was still doing that same role that I was at with Sybase. I was just doing it on my own now. And by the way,
What was his pitch to you? Since that's not what you were looking for.
yeah, that's funny. I can't remember exactly that because I say Tom probably brought it together, but in reality, we were probably getting to know each other and talking and realizing that, when you start meeting with people and deciding the strategy for the customer, like this wasn't necessarily our strategy going outward, but when we're talking to three of us about project success and what we're going to do, and say, well, I'm working with these two other people that seem to be really impressive, and could we work together? So there was that courtship period, and that was
who was the third person?
Paul. Paul,
Okay.
he was at Accenture, actually. I did not know him at Accenture
How
before,
old
but
was
I
he
knew him on the project. He's probably a couple of years older.
than you?
Yes.
Okay. And
So
so the three of you, somebody started to talk about it.
yeah, I just can't
And
remember
then
that
everybody, I
detail.
can understand that,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it became interesting, right? It said,
yeah.
yeah, this would be cool. But the whole business plan at the time was, well, we'll just sort of sell everybody back into this project.
Oh, yeah.
That
I mean,
was the
think about
business
that.
plan, but we'll be
I mean,
doing
I
it
was
else, so we'll make more money.
billing out at $225 an hour and making, probably $50 an hour of that. And now we're making it all. I mean, it was an easy decision from that
Right.
standpoint, right?
Okay.
We had cash flow. I was billing 60 hours a week and working another 40 for the company, for our own company, and so we were rolling in cash at that time. It was great.
So what happened? So how do you get beyond that
So we grew to 39 people in 18 months.
on
We
that one
were
project?
no, we didn't add any more people to that one project. In fact, we pulled people from the project over time, and so we had three or four anchor clients, because we weren't staffing. We were about designing the architecture and playing the senior roles for large systems. That's how we were positioning ourselves in the market. And so we obviously had a big role at the cellular project, and then we had one at a company in Germany, actually, because that's where Tom had relationships.
Yeah.
And then we did some at I think it was CNN, or it was CNN. And then we had this small company called Security First Network Bank that was done the first bank in the internet. Built it in a garage, and we had some relationships with over there. And they that was my customer, and we ended up with 13 of the 39 over there. And then they ended up acquiring us. So that's where we all
Was it
went.
Tom who initially had the relationships that expanded the business?
No, actually, all three of us did. Well, it was interesting. We really had our own set of clients, and it wasn't meant to be like, hey, you go figure it out and you go find your
Mm-hmm.
own. It just worked out that way.
Okay.
Tom had relationships in Germany. We tried, like we walked out and had business the next day on other things. You had to do some work and try and
Yeah,
get
but
people
somebody
interested.
that's been in business and doing this since up until 40 years old, they're going to have a lot
Yeah,
deeper relationships and a lot more
exactly.
credibility than two 25, 27-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
but
you're
so
really smart programming guys or architecture guys, but
yeah,
you're not really thought of as business guys at that. You haven't
yeah.
played that role yet anyway.
No, but we're also not really selling a business solution, right? We're selling technology. I mean, at the time,
Yeah,
we were the
that's true.
experts in technology, and so that was enough. We didn't have to have solved the business side. We had to be smart about how we ran a consulting firm, but we were selling our skills. So, and it's a Security First Network Bank. The reason we got in there was because one of the guys who had worked with us from HP was a chief architect over there. And he said, how can I get the best people on board? Solutions by Design, our consulting company now existed. Can you guys come help us? And so it came out of just relationships
And were all of these guys, you said that we weren't really doing the programming, you were doing the architecture.
yeah. I mean, ultimately they all programmed, but it was more senior level. Like they could program. That's not what they did every day.
I got it. Okay.
Probably some of them did. We probably see it's more junior people that did, but ultimately it was all in the more senior
But it
type
wasn't sort of
roles.
the Accenture model, if you will,
No,
where,
we were
it's,
not staffing. No,
yeah.
we had nobody new out of school. Everyone was experienced, and
Wow.
yeah, it was. I mean, it was perfect timing, right? That we were very fortunate on the timing. It was 95 to 97, 94 to 97 timeframe. And that was right when the internet became big. And so when Security First Network Bank, we had 13 of our 39 over there. And Chip Mahan, who was the CEO at the time, said,
Yeah.
Dan, I'm paying you too much money. Why don't you join the team? And it was interesting. And as you know, one of the challenges with any company started always comes down to the people and the founders, and is picking the right person
Yeah, but
so
you said
hard.
you had 13 people there,
Yeah,
but you had 39 people.
yeah.
Okay. So Tom's not there.
No,
Was
I'm the
your
only.
other partner there?
No.
So
That's why we
then,
had three.
so when Mayan comes to you and he says, "Okay, why don't you join the team?" What do you do? You got two other partners, and you got you got
Well,
26 other people, right? So what do you
yeah,
do?
absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, it was a big discussion about is that the right thing to do? And it wasn't the same. The CEO said that, and then we had many discussions about it, and they were pushing for it, and it all comes down to the founding relationship, and we start seeing some chinks in the armor. There was some things where I think that another year from then, it would have been tough. Like just between the relationship between us and some things
What
that
was it? What were
happened.
the
And,
chinks?
when a partner disappears for
Because
2 weeks,
talked before we even started this call. We were talking
yeah,
about how difficult people all the time. It's people, right? People build value. People
yeah,
destroy value. All right. We
right.
think it's technology. It's people. All right.
It is. Well, and we talked about we met on a project, on the cellular technology project. So that was our courtship, but that wasn't, that was working together only. And so and building solutions by design, obviously we got to know each other really well, but we had partner meetings 3 times a week, just because we were all busy, but
Uh-huh.
we meet specific on. And when Tom disappears for 2 weeks, completely disappears, no contact, no anything, and then comes back and says, "Oh," it doesn't even say anything. Like you could just kind of see some things happening,
When you say,
and
like,
so we
Tom,
just,
where were you for the last 2 weeks? He would go,
yeah,
I was out, right?
yeah, pretty much. It was tough.
He was
Um,
vague. So
Very vague.
basically, what you
And
do is when you don't have that transparency, you start not trusting people. That's kind
you
of what
totally, yeah.
happened.
Well, yeah, and I mean we're growing in business, and people depend on us, and we
Yeah.
have big payrolls, and so you worry about that. And so when we had an opportunity to do an exit, that was all stock deal, no cash, but we were really doing well cash wise, where it was a cash machine. But when we saw that opportunity, it's like, what, to join a public company as employees 160 to 200 with something that could grow. We didn't know it was going to grow or not, but felt like it was probably the right timing. 97 being the first bank on the internet, we didn't know it, but it worked out pretty well. Just realized that was the best way to get out of something that could have been,
That was an
wrong.
interesting time too, in that it was one of the few times. It was really, I wouldn't say a few times. It was, well, maybe this time is now a second time, but it's one of the few times in the history of services where services were selling for a multiple of revenue,
Yeah.
right? So here
Yeah.
you are, you're going to take stock. So they gave you a pretty high multiple on your revenue, I would think.
Well, but they were getting on that revenue, right? They didn't want the people. It was an acqui-hire because we weren't continuing as a consulting firm. We
Yeah,
were
but
their
how did they
development
value?
team.
But how did they value the thing just to
They
bring
made
you
up a
guys?
number, and we negotiated it, and just
Okay.
there was no, you couldn't do the
But
math
if
because
they're
we kept.
paying you in stock, you're going to inflate the number a little bit. I mean, that's the whole thing, because now you're a minority shareholder in in a company, and it's
Yeah.
probably restricted stock because they want to keep you around.
Yeah, it was a round number. That's all it was.
Okay.
It was just a round number that you could have argued either way. We kept all the cash, so we took a lot of money out because we
Yeah.
had cash, and then they gave it to us. And so it was a $10 stock price. So we just worked out this number of shares. Truly, whether it was probably a $2 stock price or a 20, it was still going to be some number of shares, because that's
Right.
the Chip says, like, I want to pay this many shares. Like, let's do the math. Okay, and we divided up across everybody, and everyone got something from it. But it was $10 stock price, and for the next 6 months, it went down to 4. And we were like, oh my God, what did we do? Why did we join this company? I can't believe it. Oh my goodness. And it went to 280 over the next 2 years. So
And
we were
was it restricted stock?
yeah, but not enough to matter. I think it was a short restriction.
Oh, it was. Okay.
Yeah, no, that
So you
didn't
could have
matter.
gotten out, but you wrote it down.
Well, oh no, you couldn't get out for 6 months. No way. I mean, it was at least a
Okay.
2 year hold. But yeah, we went down like crazy, but went up to 280. So we were okay. But for the first 6 months, can't believe it. So
But
we
that
rode the internet
internet,
wave. We were very fortunate at the
I
time.
think it's important to tell people. A lot of people are going to know what, first, what was it called? S1?
Yeah, Security First Network Bank became
Security
S1.
First Network Bank. It was the first internet bank. I remember that. That was such a big deal. And I
It's a
remember
huge deal.
sitting then with Chip and those guys and saying, "What's an internet bank?"
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. It was tough. I mean, the technologies were hard. Trying to solve problems was tough. Like it was technologically difficult problem at the time, and growing was tough. But we had
What made it
Chip
such a
had the
difficult technology problem? Was it just the banking regulations? Is that what the?
No, it was more just how to scale, how to scale at a volume that made sense. And
Oh, I
Java
see.
had just
Okay.
come out. It's just technology choices were tough. Growing development teams very quickly, and evolving of the internet age, and just figuring all that out. Like we were figuring it out with
Okay.
everybody else. So, and we grew quickly. I mean, we grew to 2,000 people,
How
over
long
the
did it
next
take? So
18
you
months.
said you had a downdraft in the stock price. How long was it before it sort of exceeded from the downdraft all the way down that 280? Is that what you said it was? From 10?
It went from 10 up to 280. It was the max. It was doubling. It was doubling
Oh,
for
you mean it
2
went
years.
from $10 a share up to $280 a share?
Yeah, we rode the internet wave. Yeah.
So you did not sit down. You weren't down there at the $4 price very
Oh
long.
yeah. I'm sorry. Day one, it was 10. That was the deal
Yeah.
price. And then the next week it went to 4 for 6 months. So we went in going for the first 6 months. Like, I can't believe we did this deal. Like, that's just, that was a bad idea. We were making all this money and now we're not. And now we have regular salaries. But then I'm saying, then it went up to 10 and then 15 and then 18 and then,
Wow.
probably 98, 99 when the internet went crazy. It would go from 50 to 70 to 80. It doubled one day. I mean, it's crazy.
Did you stay with them through that whole thing?
I did. I was
You
working
did?
100-hour weeks. I mean, I was working nonstop because we were growing quickly. We
Yeah.
acquired 4 companies during the when our I mean we had $8 billion market cap. Not me personally, but S1 did at one point. So we bought companies for $300 and $400 million that were startups.
Wow.
And yeah, it was crazy. I mean that all in
So
a
you
3-year
had
period.
did you get out at near the top? Did you wind up
No,
sticking with it? No?
no. Tom got out. Tom got out the first year and sold. He quit the first year and he sold near the peak. He bought an airplane and some other things.
Uh-huh.
He ended up going bankrupt, I believe. So he had some issues there. Paul got out the second
That's an
year,
amazing
and
statement right there that you just passed by.
I know, it's sad.
So it's like
Um,
he was like a lottery winner then,
Pretty much, he
the way
was.
he
Yeah.
acted once he got the money. Because
Yeah,
it
he
came
passed
so
away from throat
quickly, right?
cancer probably 6 years later too. So
Oh
he,
man.
yeah, I know. That's why he rode hard and then
I always
passed away.
wondered that if I ever gotten into a situation like that, you always hear about people saying, "Yeah, I lost it all, and then here's what I did, and I made it all back." And I'm like, "Gosh, I don't know if I would have that because that takes tremendous confidence to step back in. And
Yeah.
like it's up to you to make that kind of money. How much luck is involved, in timing and everything else,
Oh,
and
it's
relationships,
yeah.
and how it all sort of works out. It's
So
crazy.
much, so much of his timing. I mean, so much of it. Like, do you get that kind of crazy ride? That didn't make any sense at all. Like,
Right.
I doubt we had 10 million in revenue at the time.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah,
It was
yeah. Well,
10
that was
million in
internet.
revenue with an $8 billion
Yeah,
valuation.
we might have had a little more, but it wasn't 100 million in revenue for sure.
Wow.
So yeah, that was the dot-com boom.
Man.
That was the time. It was fun. I mean, I bought some nice cars and I did print out my net worth at one point near the peak. So I do have a printout of it, but I stayed until 2000. Right, we got married in 2000. I quit soon after that because we traveled, and so
Where did you
so I
meet?
got
Where did you meet your wife?
so actually met her at a bar.
In a bar. And
So
how old were you by then?
by the way, I say that, but it was a little. I like saying that, but in reality, it was a group of girls put together like a quarterly meeting, a quarterly party, and we just happened to mutual friends. So we ended up at a bar for an event, and that's how we met.
And how old were you then?
32, probably. Yeah,
32.
we were.
Okay.
I was in the
But you were
last
still
year and a
working
half.
100-hour weeks.
Oh yeah, yeah. So
And so you didn't get out. So when you finally started getting out, did you start getting out with your stock along the way? Is that what you did?
I wasn't focused on it, man. I was not. My focus was not on retaining wealth. It was around growing the company, and it just.
So
And we
you
had
stuck
tremendous
with it.
wealth.
You didn't cash
Yeah,
out.
I probably got 20% of my max, which was fine. By the way, I'm fine. But it was. I probably got 20 on my max. It took
Meaning
me
it
probably
went
three.
up and went down?
Oh yeah, it went
That's
good.
what happened.
Yeah, it went way down. We
Okay.
were. Someone wrote a book. I can't remember who it was. Wrote a book right before the crash. They said we were S1 or SFMB was listed as one of the high flyers that was not worth it and was going to crash.
Uh,
And but there were 20 others, right? And by the way, they were right on everything. And I probably should have gotten out at that point, obviously, because we were still crazy. And I'll tell you the interesting story. So my honeymoon in April of 2000, I had worked 100-hour weeks. I'm like, I'm actually gonna take a break. So for 5 days, I didn't look at anything. And our stock was 130, we could split from 260 to 130. And I finally turned on CNN on the 6th day and it was 30. And I'm like, we must have split 3-for-1. How did I not know? And that was the crash. So I blame my wife, by the way, for the fact we got married, that the stock market crashed and we lost all our money. So yeah, that's when it crashed.
You didn't
it went
lose
up
all your money. You didn't have the money.
No, exactly. I lost all the paper money. It went back up to 90 that day. It bounced around a lot. So I started getting out about that time. But yeah, it took me several years to mentally get past that, Charlie. It really did. Like when you have that
When
kind
you
of
look
paper
back, because I want to tell you, man, I went through this just recently. There are 3 companies that I passed on. All 3 of them were 20x returns, and I passed on them. Okay. And so I have beat myself up. I know exactly what you're talking about. So when you look back at that time, what would have told you not to do that? Remember that it's hard to remember what the environment was like, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, there were 20 other companies that were in the same position. We're all running and gunning. We got things that are all written up that are all positive. And then you have this one guy who's the detractor, right? How do when you look back and say, well, what should I have done? Because other people are going to be faced with this. I swear there's going to be GameStop stories, okay, that say,
sure.
At one point I was worth $100 million, and then I wrote it all the way down. I lost, $1 million. It's one of those.
Yeah.
You're going to hear those. And then you'll want the one guy who say, yeah, I sold it 480.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, it took me several years to get past that mentally, and I just wasn't focused on it. And so I think it's just the smart thing would be just what's my minimum number that I want to have, and be smart and sell at the time and be okay with the upside. But also, I've had other things like you say. I've invested, gotten returns, and not sold that stock either. So it's not my strength.
Do you think that you? Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. I'm in the same boat. But I think that you have also the same kind of let's say that instead of riding it all the way up and then riding it all the way down and selling, what if you said, this is what my number is, and it was, let's say, 50, right?
Yeah.
And you sold out at 50. Would you have been beating yourself up the fact that you sold out and you watched it go to 280? You would have to.
That probably would have been my thinking at the time as well. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's just, there's never really a good time. I think what it is just, it's fear of missing out and greed and all these negative reactions that we have, emotions, if you will, that kind of carry us with us. But, so then you wind up getting married. When you went to meet her at that bar when she was with all her girlfriends and all that, what'd you do? You show her your calculation, your spreadsheet on what your net worth was? Or did she love you just because you were so good looking and cool?
No, it was just natural attraction. I mean, she's awesome, and it was just clear there was a chemistry, and we probably only talked for 20 minutes, and then it was funny because, and I'm pretty sure I left her. I think I got her number. I left her a voicemail late at night at work, and kind of played a little voicemail tag at the time. And she's an attorney, so she was working a lot too. But interesting story with that is that the next week I was at I think it was a Super Bowl party or a party at someone's house, and she was there too. And so we actually would have probably met at the time there. And then another situation where my friend of attorney brother called and said, Dan, I've got the perfect girl for you. I'm like, I don't want to be set up, that's never going to work. And she told me who it was, and it was my wife. So there was 2 other, we would have probably met anyway.
Isn't that great?
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
That was all. Yeah. It's like God meant it to be. I mean, that's an incredible story. I love that. And then, but you then made a turn in your career. Like you said, you decided to get out and travel after you got married. I never heard of anybody that did that except you. Tell me about that.
Well, so a few things.
So she's got a career, and she's early in her career, and you're as hot as can be. So what's the deal?
Well, we were 32-ish, and we wanted to have kids, and so you've got the clock, and we said, if we want to grow a family, more than one child, and so we wanted, what do we want to do before we do that? They said, well, let's go take a break. Like if we go work another 4 years, and then we're 38, 36 and have a kid, it'd be tough. So it was mostly around that, but also I had 13 years in IT, computer science. Like, I don't know how I could have done more in that space. So for me, it was like, wow, I'm ready to do something new. And because gone pretty much the top as you could get, in terms of success, and So that's, we decided we're going to take a
S1
year
was,
off.
by the way, for those who don't know, I mean, S1
Yeah,
was in a beautiful building. It was hot company. It
yeah,
was just the center of attention in Atlanta. So you were
yeah.
right there.
It
That's
was,
pretty
yeah,
cool.
we were very fortunate. And like I said, we were worldwide. I had hundreds of people working for me across 3 continents at the time during the peak. It
And you're
was,
32
at 20,
years old. I love it.
no, at 29, right? It was a
29.
crazy
Okay.
time. Yeah. By the way, Charlie, my offices are in that same building, S1 building from
Oh,
back
okay.
then. Yeah. Um, so we wanted to go travel and just do something to feel good, that we didn't just go work and then start having kids. And so we planned the first 5 weeks of our trip around the world, bought a ticket around the world trip ticket, planned the first 5 weeks down to the day, and then not a single plan after that. And the only reason we planned the first 5 weeks is because you had to schedule to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. You couldn't just do that on the fly. You had to
Okay.
schedule
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
like 8 months in advance. So once we had that, we had no other plans. And so I wake up on my laptop and we say, what are we going to plan out? Let's go get a ticket. Where do you want to stay? We'd always stay at an expensive hotel the first night, just so, because then you always got treated well
Yeah.
in a new country. And then we go find another place to live. So it was really a life of exploration and
By the
fun
way,
for
that's I
7 months.
wasn't going to bring that up, but that's one of the things that I learned from you years ago. Is you told me, I said, so where did you stay when you went? And you told me this trick that you had. You said, yeah, you go to these like 5-star hotels. They pick you up at the airport and make it easy for you to kind of learn the city, and then you kind of go around. Then you find a really nice hotel. They cost a heck of a lot less. You check out and you go to that hotel.
Exactly.
I said, that's brilliant.
And we even got apartments, right? Because we had no end game. We were just going to do it for as long as we wanted. So
How
we
long?
ended up going
How do you know when
to,
to not do it? How long do you?
well, yeah.
When did you
So,
say, okay, time to go home?
yeah, well, we were 22 countries. And that, it gets tiring to travel. And I mean, it was easy travel. We were not roughing it. And it was,
My kind of
sort of,
travel.
yeah,
I'm not a tent guy, okay?
yeah,
Or a
we did.
youth hostel
Yeah,
guy.
yeah, we definitely were not doing that. We tried to not go too far in that to the nice side, but we decided we could have worked somewhere for 3 months if we wanted. We just
Yeah.
didn't find exactly the right situation. Yeah, there's a level of weird stress when you travel, of like you're always new places and feeling like you've got to explore and get the most out of it and take the right pictures. And at blogs before blogs, I was doing that to let everyone know where we were.
Yeah.
But there's the stress of not accomplishing anything. Like I taught myself Java programming while we were there. Like I had to have something going to mentally figure out what we were going to do next. And so once realized there's thinking more about that than
Did
not
she have
enjoying
that
the
same
travel.
stress?
I don't know if it was the same stress, but we had traveled most of the places we wanted to go, and we spent 3 weeks at the end.
Well, the
We also
stress that you're
planned it.
saying is she was an attorney, so she's a high achiever. I mean, so she's
Yeah,
sitting there
absolutely.
saying, well, what do we, okay, we've done this right.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't have any. There's only a couple of places we didn't go that we wanted to go. Like
Mm-hmm.
we had to go to the South Pole, but it was just season wise, it didn't make sense. So we went almost everywhere we wanted to go. And so we just decided that it was time. And we spent we planned it such that we were on malaria pill medicine for the whole time. We knew we wanted to get pregnant soon after. And so we planned Australia and New Zealand as the last places. And we spent 3 weeks in New Zealand, and one of the greatest places on earth, in my opinion. But 3 weeks is a long time. It's a very small place, and we did everything we could possibly do. And so we
Yeah,
came back.
I guess when you started naming the sheep that you saw, I guess that's when you knew it was time to leave, right?
Nice. Such a great place, man. I've talked to people that have been over the last 10 years. It's a little different after Lord of the Rings went in, made it more commercialized, but
Okay.
still just an amazing place.
What are the
So we
top three
came,
of the places that you went before we get past that and you
yeah,
wind up becoming like normal couples and get pregnant and now you're moms and
right.
dads and doing what you're doing? Is what were the top 3 places that you went to that you'd still want to go back to?
Well, when you say want to go back to, that probably changes a little bit, because I mean we had amazing places at times everywhere. Well, probably not everywhere, but New Zealand by far was number one for both of us.
Okay.
It was just an amazing experience. You felt like you could go talk to anybody. They invite you to spend the night at their home. It was like that kind of sense and feel, and it's just really, really awesome. People were amazing, and so many different things to do there. Probably hard to say a number two, honestly. That was for sure by far number one. I loved the uniqueness of Cambodia. That was really interesting.
Huh.
It was just the I don't know necessarily the people, but just the different environments, and also I thought a lot about Vietnam. That was powerful to me. Just not because I had any ties to the war, but just the experience of understanding of
How
what
old were
we as
you during
Americans
the
are like.
Vietnam War? How old were you in the late 60s?
I was born in '67, so I was not
Oh, so
really in
you
my
were
world.
born
Yeah,
in the war.
yeah, yeah.
That was the
But as I
Vietnam
said, I
War.
don't really have any ties to it except knowing the history. But
I
still,
see. Yeah.
when you go and you get to go in the tunnels, we've seen all the movies, right? You go in
Yeah.
the tunnels and see how they lived and how someone could pop out of in a forest and pop out of this little hole you never see and shoot. Like it was so intimidating and
Wow.
scary, and it was just it was a very powerful experience.
So you
Um,
experienced guerrilla warfare. I mean, that's what that is. Yeah.
yeah, and as
Yeah.
a tourist, right? And then I
Yeah.
mean, there weren't buses; it was just us, with the guide and going to really. It was really powerful to see that. So
Wow. So the historical side of the thing really made sense, where the United States intersected with that country in some way, in a
yeah,
meaningful way. Yeah.
well, the other side too is South America, South Africa, Cape Town. It was that was also powerful. Similar ways as you think about what happened there with
Apartheid.
yeah, apartheid, and we were 3 years removed from that, right? This is 2001, so it was
Oh,
not. It was just
wow.
before that, right? It was
So
in
was Mandela,
this.
was he the president at the time that you went there?
Yeah, well, you're asking a lot of history now. I can't remember now.
Well, that's a
But
big one.
I know, I know. By the way, my wife for sure remembers. That there's no question. She knows absolutely every detail there. But we go there and you expect a sense of racism or anger or something because of just the
Yeah.
unfairness of the situation. And we would walk through shanty towns and feel safe and comfortable and welcomed. Like it was so powerful of how it wasn't that. And I have no idea what happened after that. But then in that period of
Yeah.
time for us, we expected so much, and it was totally different than we expected.
And that's something.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's really a friendly, comfortable area, and so I always don't want. So I
We
don't. You ask going back. I don't know if I want to go back because it's so pure in my mind that I don't think I want to go and see any reality. Like it's
Kathy and I
different reality.
went there. We went to Uganda, and then we flew down to Johannesburg and then on to Cape Town. And then we
Hmm.
took a tour down to the whole Cape, right?
Yeah,
And that was, I mean, that's one of my favorite places that I've been in the world. It's just gorgeous. You could see yourself living there.
totally.
It's fantastic. Yeah,
Tabletop
that
Mountain.
was a
Yeah,
highlight for me.
Tabletop
New
Mountain was
Zealand's
amazing.
on the list for sure. I just have to
Yeah,
work myself up to enough pills to kind of get me there. It's such a
it's a
long flight.
long flight. Yeah,
Yeah, but we
yeah.
took the
We almost
longest
bought.
flight in the world. What was it, Johannesburg to Atlanta? I think that's one
Is
of.
that
It's
right?
close to the longest, and
Yeah.
I made it through that. It was not bad.
Well,
Anyway,
we almost bought a place in Cape Town. Like we were thinking we may move there.
wow.
Um, move there. We were gonna because the dollar was so strong at that
Yeah.
point. Like we stayed in the penthouse of a hotel in Cape Town. See Tabletop Mountain. I think we paid $100 a night, and it was a 2,700 foot place. I mean, square foot place. It was
Incredible.
huge, and so we almost bought a mansion there just because the price was right. My brother, I call my brother, is like, "What are you doing? That's 18 hours away. You will never go back. What are you doing?" I was like, "All right, you're right." So we didn't do it.
So when you
So
finally get back, you're both unemployed. What do
yeah.
you do?
Well, so as I mentioned, you had to fill time when we were traveling. I taught myself a programming language. I also
Yeah,
looked
yeah.
at what I thought was coming next in technology, and I was convinced that nanotechnology was the future. And so I don't know if you're familiar with nanotech, but it's the study
Well,
of
back then
materials
it
at the
was
atomic
hot. That's
level.
when everybody
It
was
was it
talking
was
about nanotech. Yeah.
it was yeah, 2001 was like this is new technology coming out, and you couldn't. There was a few popular press things on it, but there really was no information because it was so new. And so I decided the only way I could learn was go to look at who was doing it at Georgia Tech. And there's really only two departments that were focused on it. It was chemi and material science. Those are the
Okay.
two groups that we're doing. I'm like, well, chemi is really detailed, and I don't know if I want to do that. And material science was more broad, and so I went and got a master's at Tech, and I didn't have any of the under prereqs at all. So I took all the prereqs during my first year of my master's program, and then all the master's classes, and I loved it. It was a great experience.
So why the school though? I mean, why would you just say I'm just going to get into nanotech? I'm going to work with these people. Why did you have to have the degree piece? Did you
Well, there
just
was
want
no
a degree from Georgia Tech? Or I mean, what was the deal?
well, no, but you couldn't learn about it. There's no way to understand what was happening in nanotech accept through the universities. Like it was all research at that point. So I said, well,
so,
how am I going to, it was totally about how to learn. Like if there had been a way to get up to speed or teach myself, then I would have done that maybe, but I was at the forefront, or I was, Georgia Tech was at the forefront of it. And so the only way I could do it was actually get hands-on. And so and the only way to do that was become a student. And then if you're a student, what are you doing? Well, it's a master's. And so I went through the master's program and loved it. And that was,
so when you come out of
that.
before I get to the master's, I want to ask you about that. What's your wife's name?
Kristen.
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 Yeah. So what is it?
Kristen. Yes.
Kristen. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So when she came back, so she was a lawyer. What happened when she came back unemployed? Give me the short story around that.
Yeah, we were fortunate to conceive a month after we got back. So we were fortunate on time. Yeah. So we knew we were having kids, and it would have made sense for her to get back to work. Actually, take that back. She went back right away. No, she didn't go back right away. We just had 3 kids in 5 years at that point.
Yeah, you had to do it. Well, you had to catch up now, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we talked about who was going to stay home, whether it was going to be me or her. And she was definitely more.
She's staying home because she's pregnant, but you're also home because you're going to school, right?
Yeah.
There must have been some point which she was saying like, where's this going, right? Every wife, especially after she winds up getting pregnant, she starts thinking about who's going to take care of us here.
Yeah. Well, we were fortunate, right? We were, the financial aspect wasn't really a concern. Right. And we just spent 7 months on the road together with not a single argument. So we clearly could spend a lot of time together.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really good. We traveled very well.
You're going to college, university, you're itching. I'm sure you're itching to figure out like, what's the next gig here? Like, what am I going to do? How did you get to that?
What do you mean? How did I get to it? How did I get through that?
I think one of the issues that we have is sometimes we have this sense that we want to start our own company. Okay. And I'm assuming, I'm making a big assumption here that you had that sort of sense that's kind of what was leading you.
For sure.
And there's a lot of entrepreneurs, they say like, I know, but I just don't have the idea. I don't know.
Absolutely.
How to make something that's going to be an enterprise at some point, So
absolutely.
That must have been a frustrating time.
Well,
it's exciting and frustrating. I mean,
but I gave myself a break, right? Because I knew that there was nothing to do in nanotech at that point. It was too new. When I started the program, nanotech was still just starting research. And so there was no companies coming out, like not until I was in grad school. I forgot one of the first companies, but they just started. And so my view was, hey, I'm going to take the next year and a half, understand everything about it so that I can either invent something related to it, or join a company as an expert, or invest in a company. It was like my 3 ideas. Which way was I going to go with it? But I gave myself a break and said, you actually have to understand it first. So really all my work was in the nanotech field. Now, I feel like I came out of it with a mastery of understanding, at least of what tech understood about it.
You limited yourself at that point to nanotech.
Right.
You weren't limited, but beyond that.
Okay. No, that was my sole focus was what am I going to do in that? Because no one knew where I was going to apply. I'm like, well, let me become an expert and I can help figure out where it might apply. So I had a sole focus of that, which made it so I wasn't stressed about it because I knew there was no opportunities.
Did you just go to school at that time, or did you do something else at that time?
No, I did. Yeah,
all you did was go to school.
Yeah, they paid me. I was a master's student. What?
You were soaking in nanotech at this point.
Yeah, well, I mean, certain classes are nanotech specific, but I had to take 9 undergrad courses. I'd take physics, DiffyQ, optics. I'd take all the undergrad courses because I didn't have those. So I'd take those too. So when you said I didn't go to tech, I actually did do all the engineering at tech, but during my master's program.
How long did it take from beginning to end to get that master's?
2 years.
2 years. That's quite an investment. Yeah. What was it like going to school at 34 or 33, 34 versus going to school at 20? Was it a richer experience?
It really was. I went to learn. I truly went to learn, and that's totally a different experience. So I didn't need social. It was social with my program, but I wasn't going out at night or anything. And so I had a truly different experience. And I can just think of like thermodynamics, which is a tough course at Tech, sophomore course.
That's the backbreaker, right?
And I was auditing all these courses. I wasn't getting grades, but still, for me, I wanted to master them. And so I was looking at the kids in there. Man, they were dying. And you get grades of 19 and 27, and a C would be a 22. And I'm like, wow, you knew 22% material and you get a C, and so, my goal was to miss nothing. And so I went in to learn, focused on it.
So were
And
you the guy that screwed up the curve?
well, so yeah, I didn't miss very much. I really could, but I was focused on it, right. My goal was to learn, but because I was auditing, I didn't impact the curve, so it was good. I still got saw the numbers, but it didn't impact the curve. But so it kind of made me sad. It made me feel good about not going to tech, honestly, because how hard
Yeah.
the kids had to work. It was tough, and so kind of like I'm glad I went when I was there to learn, as opposed to having to have a college experience. Now, I know a lot of people had a great time at tech, and
Yeah.
even said it wasn't hard. So I don't want to say it's everybody, but for me, I went to learn, and tech was such a great experience to learn that I really loved it. I became a student, and I absolutely loved it.
What a great way to do it. I remember
Yeah.
I only bring this up because when I started taking my oldest daughter, and you start doing this, and you'll have this opportunity if you haven't already, is you start taking them for college visits, right? And you
Yeah.
walk the campus and you realize I would love to do this.
Oh my goodness.
Like right
Absolutely.
now, like I
Yeah.
want, I'd like an English lit major or something. I want to learn, and what an
Yeah.
environment here. It's so beautiful, and it's just so inviting, and just missed all that when you're 18 years old. You're
Yeah.
more concerned like what are other people going to be thinking, and who am I going to fit in with, and how's it going to be? What's my life going to be like, and all that. It's good to have your life settled and then just learn.
Yeah. From a learning experience, but right, we had a great time in college too. I wouldn't trade that for the world undergrad at college, but I didn't care about learning, right? That wasn't the goal of college.
Well, you're one of those guys. You're so smart that learning came easy too. I mean, or at least passing the academics came easier to you, I would think.
Yeah, it did. It's
Yeah,
fortunate from that standpoint.
that's what it was. So how do you make this transition into something that's commercial out of
That
now that you're a
that's where it got
graduate?
Yeah, that's where it got tough. Truly looking around what the
Okay.
opportunities were, and what realized was that nanotech was not technology on its own. It became a feature of other solutions, but we didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, I
And
call
so
that
the word
embedded technology. Yeah.
complete.
There's
Yeah, but,
this
but
example of that. I was interested. This is back in the early 90s. I was interested. The hot technology then was multimedia.
mhm.
And who was it? Who was the guy that ran? Was hired. Oh, Vince. His name was Scully. Was he the guy that came out of Pepsi and ran Apple?
Yeah, yes,
I forget his first name.
I forget to.
Yeah, but he made a comment, and in my research, and I was doing research, by the way, in the Emory Library because there was no internet. Okay,
You're right. It was
and
no.
and I read something because it's multimedia, man. This is where I need to go. This is going to be my next big thing. On and on. And he said multimedia is going to be a $0 billion opportunity. And that was the quote. I never forgot that quote when I read it because what his point was it's going to be embedded in everything. It's not its
Right.
own thing, and that's what you're saying about
Yeah,
nanotechnology too.
exactly right. But
Yeah.
didn't know that at the time, right? I missed Scully's comment, so I didn't hear that. That would have helped me maybe. um, so yeah, so I've been 6 months trying to figure out what the opportunities were, and then I had a relationship with an attorney who was also big in nanotech and believed it was the future,
Hmm.
and he had a relationship at Emory around some anti-cancer research that was based on nanotechnology, and so we started a company around a drug that was promising out of Emory, focused on cancer, but treat with
Well,
depending
how'd you
on
find that?
because the lawyer I had befriended had a relationship with the professor,
Oh, okay.
and so, yeah, and so we started a company around that called Nanovici, which was conquering cancer through the power of nanotechnology.
Hmm.
And it was so ran that for a year and a
That's a
half
pretty
into early.
big vision.
It is, and I knew nothing about the drug development space. So truly a new space for me. I knew everything about about nanotech that was important in that space because I'd just been hands on. So to me, that wasn't the interesting part. Everyone else said that was the magic. I'm like, well, I understand that magic, but drug development's a nightmare. Like it's such a hard space. And but we utilized a lot of people that had experience in it. So I had to get to know a whole new industry. Realized year and a half in that it was one of the 999 out of 1,000 drugs that wasn't going to work. And
Oh
so
God,
we ended up, which was cool. I mean,
that was
we
two
ended up
years. You
selling it
say
about 18 months.
18 months.
And then
Okay.
we ended up selling it to one of the partners we were working with because there still was some value in the research, and it was, made a dollar on it kind of thing. It was a positive exit, but it was not a big win.
What made it for a positive exit? What was the cost basis that you had that said it was a positive exit?
Well, a year and a half, I think we had taken some money in, and I think I'd put money in. Like, well, we hadn't spent a ton because it was a lot of we'd done a lot of scientific research and pushing it into clinical trials
Were you
for
getting
early
paid to do any
preclinical.
of this?
No, I wasn't paying myself anything. So yeah, it
Okay,
was only
that's what I'm saying.
a few of
Okay.
us in the company. Yeah. So
I don't understand
um,
how you sold it. Doesn't sound like there was anything there. It's pretty
was
amazing.
that right? There was still, yeah, that's right. There was still some value in some of the things we had developed, and one of
Okay.
the partners we had I mean, it sat on their 10K for like 7 years. It was kind of funny. So so that was
What
it.
was
So
the
that
so when you say you sold out, what was like, do you remember the well, you know what was the exit number, would you tell us?
it was at least $1 more than I put into it. It wasn't a lot. It's one of those check mark positive
So
exit
was it
ones.
a handshake exit? No, no
No,
M&A
no,
lawyer involved?
there was money changed hands, but it wasn't a lot. So
Okay, great. So
yeah,
then now you're out again.
yeah.
Now what do you do?
And then so I was mentoring. My financial advisor had connected me with someone a year,
I just
six
had a
months before
question
that.
before you tell me the exact next thing. Did you ever think, okay, so I've done this and I did the nanotech, I did my master's degree, I've tried the piece with the FDA and drug and that whole process. Uh, Maybe I should just go back to IT. Did you ever think that?
Not really. I mean, I
That
it
was,
was
you parked that career, that was over.
well, and it went over, but it just wasn't exciting. It wasn't
Okay.
something I really want to do. But I'm in it now, right? So it took it
Yeah.
what I hadn't seen the right opportunity at the time, and
Got
I
it.
was still thinking there'd be new things.
All
So
right. So then go
well,
on. So tell me you get out of this. So you sell this for more than $1 you put into it. And then you do what?
so I was mentoring a local entrepreneur. Just every week we are having breakfast at Waffle Houses. He was trying to figure out the LED space, LED lighting space, and this was 2007 and 8, and they were looking for a CEO. And they had I knew some of the people they were looking at. And they weren't going to be a right fit. And so the day I sold the Nanovici, or that week, he's like, "Well, Dan, why don't you be CEO?" Now I actually hadn't thought about it. Like, I don't
Did
know
you
anything
meet
about
this
LED
LED
tech.
lighting guy? Did you meet him through tech, through your
No, he's
relationships at
actually through
Georgia Tech?
my financial advisor recommended I help him out. He's a nice guy. And he's a super nice
You
guy.
just never know where they're going to come from. That's why I'm asking this question. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's right. It's just opportunities. And again, I wasn't looking at it for me. I was just there to help him. And a good guy. And, you always willing to help people, especially if they're good people and they listen. And, and so we, 6 months of getting to know each other and the experience us in the industry, really challenging at the time. Like, it was really early in the space. And so I said, you know what, good idea. Let me decide. And, work 70 hours a week the next 3 weeks. I went over to China and met the partner was over there and spent
Hmm.
3 weeks in China. I was like, wow, it was actually a great opportunity. So we ran that for 4 years.
Wow.
But it was, yeah, but it was 2008, 9, which was a tough time financially to raise money. And so, it was definitely
There's your timing
bootstrapping for
again,
the first
right?
couple of years. What's that?
Timing's everything.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So
Yeah.
and we were early in the space. We had 4 patents on some pretty key technology, and I think in 2011 we sold more LED lighting than anybody in Georgia.
Wow.
And it was over $1 million, so it wasn't trivial, but I mean
Uh-huh.
that was still really early in the space. And
Were
in
these light
Cooper
bulbs? Is that what they were? Or?
fixtures, yeah, the bulb concept didn't come out till several years ago. Yeah, they were fixtures. Like, you were fully committed to a full replacement of a
Okay.
fixture early in the LED technology.
Okay.
And when we started, there were 50 LED companies in the world. 2 years in, there were 2,000 LED companies in the world. Like, I mean, thousands. It became the thing that everyone's going to do.
Well,
Most in
that's what
China,
happens in a new industry, right? I
it
mean, a new
does.
technology like that. Yeah.
And then in 2011 and 12, it got down to about 50. Like, and part of it was that the big guys, Cooper Lighting and some of the other ones, had put in tens of millions of dollars in LED lighting innovation centers. They all realized it was coming, and they said they wanted to take it over. And so they put tons of money in, and we were probably the last acquisition in the space. Not the very last, but one of the last ones in the space. Like, we were very fortunate to get out, because being a small guy in the lighting industry is really tough.
Yeah,
So
I was going
LED
to say.
tech was great technology, but the lighting industry is a good old boys network.
How did
And
that?
I don't know that
How did LED lighting? How did that become interesting to you after messing around with nanotechnology and drugs and cancer and all? I mean, it seems like that.
well,
It
new
sounds
new
very
technology.
industrial to me versus very. scientific, if you will, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with you. But it was the challenge. It was challenge, something I knew nothing about, new technology, and it was like the guy and like the group, and I thought we were in a good position to early in the space with some
How
IP.
does somebody like that who's sort of early on like that, how do they bring somebody like you in? I'm a pretty high powered executive at that point, you know, with a lot of industry, well, not industry lighting, industry expertise in lighting, obviously, but a lot of, let's say, business expertise. Okay.
Yeah.
How do they bring them on? How does he attract you into a deal like that?
Well, I spent every once a week with him at Waffle House for 6 months, so I got to know him personally. And it
Well,
was
I
it
got
was a
that. So you got the
relationship.
relationship thing
Yeah.
right. How do you make the money right? How do you make the equity right? How does that work?
That's always a challenge. Are you kidding me? Like that's the initial planning
That's
for a
why I'm
divorce.
asking this
Yeah,
thing, and I'm going to
yeah,
probably dig a little bit. So,
yeah.
how did,
It's very hard. And I can't.
how did you work
I
it
think
out
we
with him?
I
Can
think we
you share?
divided a third. Like there was another partner involved that was in China that was kind of the source of a lot of the capability, not the science, but the sourcing side.
But a
And so I'm pretty
third, a
sure we
third, a
divided.
third.
I think that's the way we did it. Yeah.
That seems to be you always do that. If you got two partners, the quickest way to get something done is to say 50-50. If you got three,
Right.
you say a third, a third, a third. And what you're really doing is sort of not having that confrontational conversation. So that's how it
Exactly.
winds up being that way. Is that what you would
Exactly.
recommend the way people sort of do this do this now? I mean, would you give that kind of advice to somebody if it was you at that time?
Yeah, I think it depends on the situation very much. And could I have gotten more? I don't think I convinced them. They were young guys. They wouldn't have seen the value in that. I don't know that I brought the value either. Could one of them probably argue more? I'm not sure, but you couldn't have, there was no right answer. And so the easiest way was that.
Okay.
And, I wasn't, no one was going to get paid anything to start, right? We were bootstrapping to begin with. And
Oh, so
so
this
we
was
were
it
all
was
getting,
raw startup at this point.
it was, yeah. I mean, they would say they were doing it for a year and a half, but truly it was raw startup.
Well, year
I
and
mean,
a
they
half
had, they
is
had
still raw
product those.
startup. Yeah, I got to give you
Yeah, yeah,
that.
totally. Yeah. It was figuring it out, right?
It was funny. One of the things that I did talk to, Wells Burke.
Yeah,
He worked with you down there at the ADDC for a while, and he made a comment in an interview that I did with him. He said all of the value of a company comes right near the end towards the sale.
yeah,
And I was like, wow, that's so true, you know?
yeah,
Like you said, like even with S1, this, oh yeah, up it goes and it's going great. And then, but where does it end up eventually? The economics actually prove out and the hype goes away. We're seeing this with sort of Tesla now, right? That same kind of thing.
right.
What's the real value? Not what's the perceived value, but the more you are in that business, the closer you get to the real value. And at the
Yeah,
very beginning, it's a bunch of people fighting over what's worth virtually nothing now, right?
yeah,
Yeah, very
exactly
difficult to
right.
do that.
And you're planning for divorce, right? And that's the worst part. Because you truly are, right? You're going through what happens if you don't work hard enough, or what happens if how do you get your stock back? I think it's all planning for divorce, and then you
Oh
fight,
my
and
God,
then
that's so true.
that's and then you wrap it up and forget it. That's why I always tell people, man, it's gonna be a nightmare forming it, because you're gonna have to talk about all the terrible things. Your attorney's gonna make you say, "Here's what's gonna happen. What are you gonna do? How are you gonna deal with each other when you hate each other?" And then you have to say, "Okay, now we're done. Let's be friends again." I think it's a tough period of company.
I'll tell you, if anybody's listening to this interview that's trying to form these companies, this conversation that we just had is super valuable that people never
Yeah,
have. Okay, but you're
yeah,
so right. I never saw it categorized that way. Is that yeah? Let's talk about. It's sort of coming up with what are those marriage agreements called? Where
prenups.
the
Yeah,
prenups.
prenup.
Just
Yeah,
imagine. So we're in love and everything's great and all that. Let's talk about if this whole thing unravels. What are you going to
exactly.
get? What am I going to get? How and people don't do prenups for that reason. Who wants to have that conversation, right?
Of course. Yeah,
So, and that's exactly what happens with forming a company. So that partnership is in fact a marriage. It's very difficult,
yeah.
very difficult. So
I
then you
mean,
get out of there. Where do you go then?
um, so out of the lighting business, you mean, or
Yeah, you're out of the lighting business.
yeah,
I did finally. You did get out, and you did get some money out of it. I'm
yeah,
sure.
we actually did quite well in that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it was Cooper Lighting. We were one of the last exits. It wasn't a bad, it was a great exit, and they did. it took a year and a half to get our products out of their process. I mean, they commercialized it into a Cooper lighting, and they think they did 100 million on it in the second year. Like it was, we had great
Interesting to me
product.
when you said it was the last, we were one of the last to exit. I took that as, well,
A
you took
negative,
whatever
no,
you could get, because
not
usually
at
the
all.
first to exit are the guys that usually make the really big bucks, you know? So that's interesting. That
Yeah.
surprised me when you said that.
Yeah, so no, I would say the first exit probably didn't make as much. It was probably there's some peak somewhere where they made the most.
Yeah.
What I meant though was that the industry was coming down to where there just weren't as many players is what I really meant, and that
Right.
we were in a really good position. I had multiple offers, so it was the right place to
So
be.
you caught it when the game became when distributors, if you fact, guys with distribution systems in place were ready to buy because they were believing the technology was real and it was going to be a real product.
Exactly.
That's what
Right.
it
Right.
came
We
down
took
to.
all the risk out of the business because
Right. When
we
it
spent
became a
4 years
skew
there
to
now.
them, they're in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
good. I'm glad you did really well. So now you
Yeah.
had
No, it was
another
great.
one,
Our guy, my
but now
two
you're
co-founders,
unemployed again.
I am.
Well, you
Yeah.
did. I guess you worked with them for a while, probably through an earn-in or something. The
Um,
acquirer.
yes, I did. I spent a year
Okay.
in a cushy job. They paid me a lot of money to drive down to Peachtree City every day and not really have a boss. And it was good.
Did
So,
they want? Did they? I would imagine that, was it Cooper Lighting? You said.
mhm.
Yeah, I would imagine that they wanted to keep you. They saw you as an executive that could really help build their team.
Yeah, it could have been that, I didn't have the lighting experience, and it is very much a relationship game. And I don't know that I put forward that I wanted to do that.
Right.
That I wanted our product to be successful. I wanted my two co-founders to be successful, but I was not long in the lighting game. They knew that.
Okay.
So
So then what
truly,
do you
when it
do?
ended, they were like, "What's that?" Well, I would
Okay.
tell you at the end of that, Charlie, they were really paying me a lot of money. And I was like, guys, I'm really not doing anything. Like, shouldn't you quit paying me? It came down to that. And I
How
probably
come
should
you
have
didn't?
wrote
How
it for
come
a
you
while.
didn't? How come you didn't just take a page out of your dad's book and do the hour and a
Should
half a
play golf.
day and play golf 6 days a week? I mean, what was wrong
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah, I know. I know. Yeah, it was, I should have. So,
You missed that one. Maybe you're not
yeah,
as smart as I think you are, Dan.
I might not. I did miss an opportunity. Yeah.
So then it is tough. So you leave something that now you're, how old are you at this point? Now you're
Yeah,
36,
by the
you
way, we
said?
missed a whole
37?
company, Charlie. We missed a
What?
whole company. I forgot about. I missed the sequence a little bit because I had the medical device company in between. So I'm out of sequence. But anyway, well, so
That's
this
okay.
was
So
20,
what
yeah,
happened then?
2012. It was 2012 we sold that,
Yeah.
and then I saw who's the head of the ATDC at that point. Uh,
Was it
the
Blake?
woman. No, it was for like the woman, Nina. Nina.
Oh, Nina. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, she's
She was
great. I
Nina.
can't remember.
She was a pharmaceutical kind of background, I
She
think,
was.
biology. She was a PhD in
She
biological
was. She's
science
great.
or something.
But we saw each other at a cocktail party, and she's
Oh,
like,
okay.
"Dan, what are you doing?" I said, I don't know. I'm not doing anything. So why don't you look at becoming an EIR? I said, I don't know what that is. I don't even know if I knew what ATDC was at that point. And so I came down that week, and I was like, wow, this looks like a great job. And so I spent 2 years,
So what
as
is
an
an EIR?
EIR,
How did she
entrepreneur in
explain it to you?
residence. She said, so I don't know how she explained it to me. What I thought about it was that it basically you spent 50% of your time coaching or mentoring or being there for the startups that were on the floor, so or the ones that were committed, and then have open office hours to meet other entrepreneurs in the business. And then 50% of your time figure out what you could do next.
Got it.
And I'm like, and they pay you a little bit of money and pay for parking. I'm like, what a great thing to do. Like that's exactly where my mindset is. So I'm going to go be around smart people, help where I can help if I can help, and then kind of be in a position where I should be finding what I want to do next.
Right.
So it was
And
a
EIR
great,
stands for Entrepreneur in Residence, right? Yeah.
right.
Okay. So you joined them.
Yeah. 2 years. I ran it for two runs,
Two
which was
different
really,
times you joined them?
no, I was for 2 full years.
Two
I
full
was an
years.
EIR.
What was your
Supposed to be a 1 year.
expectation of becoming an EIR? How long do you think you were thinking you were going to spend there?
Well, they said, a max of a year. So my view was, yeah, hopefully I'd find something to do in a year. That was my
Yeah.
goal. I mean, I had, I think 3 or 4 different times I spent, I had someone come in my office who was a new idea and said, hey, can you help me? I'd spend an hour with him. They say, I need a CEO. And so I spent 3 different times. I probably spent a month and a half with companies that were there about potentially joining them and running them and helping them. So for me, I could not have been in a better situation, and I would have never met those people if that weren't the case. So
But that those people, if they come into ATDC, I always wondered this, and they talk to you as an EIR, and you start showing an interest in maybe joining them, how do they view you? Because you're sort of working for ATDC or Georgia Tech, you're kind of working for the state at that point. Do they view you? Do they view you at a pure level with somebody that might be an outsider who's already or currently a CEO, if you will? Is
that's
there
an
a
interesting question.
disadvantage, I guess, is what I'm asking
Yeah,
at
I'm
this
not.
point?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I thought of myself as a Georgia Tech employee, so I'm not sure that that would have even come across. I mean, they
Okay.
saw the ATDC as a service to them, as a way to help, and they signed up for open office hours. So I doubt they probably had that view on it. And plus, once you have a relationship with someone, all that goes out the door. Like, hey,
Yeah,
Dan, you
that's
sound
true.
really
Yeah.
interested, and would you be interested? And again, I'd spend 70 hours a week for a month with them and help them think through it. And with the idea that maybe we do something, wouldn't be that, hey, I'm doing this to become
Why
your
didn't
CEO.
those
It's
did
like,
those did those three things include those three companies you spent time with? Was one of those where you are now?
no, no.
Okay. So what
I,
happened with those three? Was there sort of a common theme on why those three did not work out?
Yeah. So had very strict criteria. I didn't have it going into an EIR or role, but I developed very strict criteria about what I needed to do my next gig.
Ah,
And
cool.
there were four of them. One was it had to be a big opportunity. I want to do something big. I didn't want to have a small exit or just do something that wasn't great. It had to be so big market, innovative. Do I got excited about it? I didn't want to just make a little better something. I want to do something new and that was I get excited about every day. Had to have IP potential, something that was that we could own and sell as an asset later, and had to have the perfect co-founder. The perfect co-founder.
Perfect.
And, yeah, and that I'm telling you, those are really strict criteria. So those three
What's a
were
perfect
great.
co-founder?
What's that?
What's a perfect co-founder?
Well, I'll characterize it as my co-founder now because I didn't know what that meant, but it still had to be perfect. But
Why
someone
did you
that
say it that way? That's crazy.
well, because that's always the issue, right? You always have challenges with the people, and so finding one that you can guess that you're not going to divorce, right? That that you can stay with, and so that was really important to me.
When did you learn that people were so important?
Oh, from the very beginning. I mean, that's like the solutions by design. The first one, you realize that, and I mean, when you're forming a partnership, when you're working for people, that's important. But you can always leave. But when you're
Yeah, yeah.
forming a company, you're betting your life meaning some period of time of your life that can have great impact. You got to try and get it right. So
So what is the perfect guy? When you said perfect, do you remember back like the first guy that you met with? What made that person imperfect?
well,
Was it always, I
so
should say this, was it always the person
no,
that's
no, not
no,
all.
it wasn't. Okay.
So some of the market wouldn't be big enough. So like the perfect co-founder is to me the last thing. Like you got to get through the other ones too, and then the perfect co-founder is probably the hardest. But who cares to evaluate that if the other ones don't work? So like one of them was the market wasn't big enough. Great opportunity. Co-founder could have been perfect, right? I didn't spend enough time to know if they were or not. A month that's not enough time, and but the market wasn't big enough. Another one, the technology wasn't innovative. The market was huge. Founder might have been perfect, but I didn't really care. It wasn't innovative enough. So it was just a different things that didn't make it meet my criteria.
So
And then
when you have somebody that's can you were there some things that when you look at some of these, you've as an EIR, you talk to a lot of founders, right?
a
Is
lot.
there some things that you saw that said, "Oh, this guy wouldn't be perfect." Here's the chinks in the armor, to use your
Oh,
term.
for
Okay,
sure.
what are the
All
kind
kinds
of
of stuff.
chinks that entrepreneurs might be self-reflective on? That says maybe I'm not as great as I think I am. Maybe I'm not as marriage compatible as I
Yeah.
should be. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, some of it's humility, right? I mean,
Okay.
everyone's, I
Like
expect everyone to be
authentic
smart.
humility.
What's that?
Like authentic humility.
Yeah. Right. Right. I mean,
Like you
I
really
want,
yeah.
well, I mean, well, I guess my thing, like everyone's smart. My view is like anyone, I'm kind of writing off a whole people maybe not be super smart, but like the people I'm thinking about working with are smart.
Yeah.
They also have to realize they don't know everything. And so
Yeah.
it's, you've got to be able to be understanding there's so much you don't know. That's when I talk about humility. That's what I mean.
Yep.
Not, I don't know how else to describe it. You want to have a personality that you get along. I mean, that's really important, and I don't know how to describe that, but it's like you
But
just have to feel like, you do know, right? There's
yeah.
chemistry. There's a chemistry with that person. And ethics is really important, right? And if you talk enough to someone, like when they do that, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, because I know there's corners to be cut, but true ethics, to where cheating and stealing, and you just can tell, you don't know if they're gonna do it to you if they're doing it to others. So that's really important. And then work ethic. Work ethic is probably the number one, actually, because I know I'm going to work harder than anybody, and I don't know that I work harder than my co-founder. I think he actually works harder. So that's so important, and know that that's going to continue, right? Because people go through different life changes, and know that they're committed to they can commit to your common goal.
Cool. I know that your current co-founder, there's some cultural differences, right? I mean, I forgot, is he Iranian?
He is.
He
Yeah.
is, I thought, yeah. So was there, here's an American and Iranian. He's gone to school, obviously, Georgia Tech, getting his PhD there. Is there any issues with regard to that, or you've done
Zero.
enough world traveling that you kind of
Zero.
What's up?
I don't even zero issues.
Zero. That's cool.
Yeah. But he also he's an American. I mean, he it's interesting to learn about his background, his family. His family's still all over there. He talks to him every day.
Yeah.
But he is American.
Oh, okay.
I don't think of it any other way, at all. So
That's cool. That's good to know. I just always wondered about that. That you
yeah, and I'd be
there are
okay.
cultures,
I'd be
like if
okay
you're
if
dealing, you've negotiated deals, like you said, you had a partner who was in China at one point, right? I mean,
Mhm.
that person who's Chinese, I mean, they have a different view of how business is done. I remember trying to do a
Of course.
deal once years ago with a Japanese guy, and he was just always so agreeable. And I found out that that's how they are. They never really say no, even though they mean
Absolutely.
no, because they didn't agree enough times, and that meant no.
Right.
I mean, it was like, oh my god.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So,
So
and I would have been okay with a different culture, but there's nothing like that. So
that's cool. That's good. That's good. So how did you finally well, I'll say this. At one point I remember talking to you while you were in EIR, and there was some concern that maybe you're just getting too comfortable being an EIR, I think was that you can kind of fall into that role, and it's like
Oh yeah.
you start getting to past escape velocity, and the
Yeah.
next thing you
Yeah.
know,
I
you're there
told
for a long time, and
Yeah.
that wasn't the role. Okay, so how did you eventually find Pointivo?
Well, if I hadn't, I don't know what, I might have just stopped being the EIR. I don't know. And like, I
Yeah.
didn't give in and say, I'm going to settle on this one at all. And then, I don't know if you remember, but Blake, he was an EIR with me side by side. And before he became head of ATDC, and he had met my co-founder
I
Habib.
forgot he was an EIR. I always thought of him
Yeah.
as acting general
Yeah.
manager of the ATDC. No, he was an
Yeah.
EIR. Okay.
He and I sat right next to each other, and he actually found the technology. He
This is
met
Blake
Habib.
Patton, by the way, who's now the founder, and he's the managing partner of Tech Square Ventures. Okay, so he started a venture capital firm out of
Founder of the
ATDC.
Engage program. Yeah.
Yeah, I found it pretty amazing. Yeah, he's been on this show.
Amazing where he's gone with that. Yeah. So, but he was a lowly EIR with me back in the day. But he had met Habib before he had finished his PhD for exactly the Pointivo technology. So I had worked with Blake thinking about whether he should take it. And I was like, Blake, this is a great opportunity. You should do it. Like, I loved it from a year before.
Yeah.
But there was contract issues, some other reasons why I couldn't come out. And so when Habib was graduating, it was a time to look at it again. And Blake had already had in his mind, he'd already
This is
been
when
head of
your
ATDC.
now partner was graduating, you're saying?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And so it was a year later, and Blake was on to other stuff. And so I'm like, well, let me go look at it again. So I already had a little bit of background, had someone who I trust a lot in Blake, who had already validated Habib as being a good person. And Habib, I spent 6 months together thinking about what we could do with this. And it took 6 months to negotiate the starting of it and all that kind of stuff. And so we got to know each other really well from that. I'm like, wow, this not only is it unlimited market potential, we have amazing IP that we can develop around it. It was innovative because of stuff no one else had done, and potentially the perfect co-founder.
Well, why don't you talk a little bit about the technology so that people know what we're talking about?
Yeah. Hey, Charlie, can you pause? I've got to get a laptop. Can you pause this for a second?
Yeah, I can. So just maybe if you could talk a little bit about the technology so that people know what we're talking about instead of them trying to guess like what's going on. It's kind of sometimes
Yeah,
gets frustrating.
so what Habib had invented was the ability to take imagery from a camera. It doesn't really matter the type of camera, but to form a digital structure around it. And so if you think about a roof, because that's where we started, by the ability to take images of a roof, create a digital structure of that, and then through algorithms extract useful information about the roof meaning measurements, different facet types, edge types, everything you need to generate an estimate to repair a roof was how the original thought concept was. But if you think about we realized, okay, that's a base capability to turn imagery into structure, into valuable data. Many opportunities where that could be applied. Construction space, to have every subcontractor walk around what they've done for the day with their cell phone, take pictures of it, and then have that automatically generate a building information model every day and compare it to what was supposed to be built. Keep things on schedule, make sure there's no errors. In the cell tower space of analyzing what's on a cell tower, managing that and repairs, having a drone fly up and do that as opposed to someone climbing it and doing it manually. Like just all the applications that this could be used on was really amazing. And we had 100 of them when we started in terms of what we could do.
Which is exactly what the issue was that I kind of brought up at the beginning. So it's great.
Yeah.
So this is amazing technology, and it can be applied to so many different problems that are out there. Okay, so there's so many different opportunities. That's really great, and that's really awful.
Yeah,
right.
Totally.
So what?
Yeah.
So what? You joined though, and with the company without knowing exactly what you were going to point at that point, right?
For sure. Yeah, and by the way,
your
it
first
wasn't
job
ready.
was to figure this thing out, right? Where am I?
And it wasn't ready.
How are we going to commercialize it? Is really the question, right?
Yeah, it was technology coming out of academia because he was not a professional programmer.
Yeah.
And we didn't know where to apply, and it wasn't really ready to take out. Meaning,
How did you get it? How did you get it out of Georgia Tech?
We licensed
Doesn't
it.
Georgia Tech own that? Did they own the IP at that point? Who owns it?
So there was a patent around it, and that was actually the reason it took 6 months to get going is because there was some messiness around whether the people that had funded the project owned it or Georgia Tech owned it. So it was 6 months of wrangling through legal matters to get us to be able to pull it out of Georgia Tech.
6 months. Did Blake help with that?
Yes, Blake was part of that, but it was, I don't know, it was yeah, he did. I mean, it was tough. We tried, we couldn't be too involved in it, but it was tough. And we had
all of the deals that you did, where you had to kind of cut your own deal to get into this company. Was this one more difficult or easier?
It was
because you had this sort of third party, if you will, that sort of sat in between you, Blake and Meany. But yet you had an academic in Habib who knew nothing about any of this stuff.
No, right.
Right? What is equity and what is business and what's a balance sheet? He doesn't know any of that, right? He's never had any of that training. So how did that come down?
It was truly one of the toughest, and I almost walked away because it was ugly. And it was a lot of different people with different biases involved. The one thing is it couldn't happen without me and Habib. Like there was no chance of it moving forward. Like without Habib, clearly it couldn't have happened.
Yeah.
I mean, we could have found another me, or they could have found another me to do it. But as early as it would have been tough. And so we ended up getting, we still pay the price of not getting, exactly what we wanted, but no one got exactly what they wanted. This was not Dan dictates or Habib dictates.
What was in fact the hardest part of it all? Was it the fact that he had this sort of ignorance towards what these deals look like, or was it?
You're talking about Habib?
Yeah, I mean, because
there was no issue with me and Habib. No, I told Habib I would make sure it was fair. Like I was protecting him and me. Yeah, no, there was more of there was another investor that had potential rights to it. So we ended up, there was all kinds of messiness. There was really 3-4 different parties arguing about it, but Habib and I were fully aligned. Yeah, we built
a relationship. A bunch of people fighting over something that isn't really at this point worth much. Okay,
worth zero. It's worth zero because if Habib walks away,
it was the greed of maybe somebody that actually makes it for a sticking point and where it's going and how to get this deal done.
Well, and I mean, I was greedy, right? We're all greedy. We all have greed in that respect.
We all have it, but we control it sometimes. And there are some people that don't, and it's my way or the highway. And
well, like I said, no one thought it was the best deal. So it was, walked
That's
away
so
with everyone
cool.
was equally unhappy.
Well, I guess
Or
that's
you could say
good.
they're,
So then
yeah,
where do
you
you
could say
go with
equally
that?
happy, I guess.
Then where do you
What's
go
that?
with the thing? So now you say, okay, so now I've joined this thing. Now I have to crack this problem, which is how do I commercialize it?
Yeah,
Now you started
yeah,
this, you joined them in 2014,
yeah.
right?
That's right.
And here we are. It's
Yep,
2021.
I
All
know.
right. So
Yeah,
you've been in this, baby. And the way
I
you
know.
work, you put a lot of hours down in this
A
thing.
lot of hours. Yeah.
What's been
So
happening? What
yeah,
was
so the
the
first,
early
yeah,
on? What were the issues that you kind of faced with?
yeah. So the first 3 years was even figuring out if it was technically viable. Like, yes, we had a patent on it, we've done a lot, but truly, like, he initially had it set up with fixed cameras, which wasn't practical, and then we went to mobile phone, which was a good way to go, but that's not practical for roofing, and it presents other challenges. Like, truly, technically, a really hard problem to solve. So he had the idea and he had the capability, but hadn't had it actually come to fruition. So the first 2 years was really only three of us, four of us actually, just from a technical standpoint, him doing that, and then me canvassing the industry and figure out where could it apply. And one thing we did really early on is we did go the grant route because I knew I couldn't bring a lot of money into it. Because how would I sell, what we were going to do? And so we
It
brought in
wasn't a
just enough
business
money.
yet, right? It was
No, it
still
wasn't a business.
research, is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
and I didn't pay myself until 3 years ago. So I mean, it was we
Wow.
were we were really free from that standpoint. We had employees, but we were as low cost as we could go. But we 1.6 million in grant money over the first 4 years
Hmm.
from the NSF because we were going to transform the construction industry, which was a infrastructure improvement. And so and truly that is what we will do one day. We're still not there, but that was the forming it. The good thing about grants, and this is something that I always tell people, you can't do grants that are distracting, right? You can't have a grant that forces you one direction. The grant was exactly what we were going to do. The fundamentals around, we had to develop and figure out how to build a platform that we built
Oh,
to
that's
support
just
the construction
fortunate.
industry.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
well,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we wrote the grant was pretty open, so we wrote it like that. But truly, we did it was funding exactly what we were doing, and they were thrilled because the progress we made was great. And roofing is part of construction. That was the first one that took off, and so that was it. But challenge to the first 3 years, what market could do it? Did it technically work? Once we figured out we could technically make it work, drones had come into play and realized if we're talking about assets, like big enough assets where it matters, then drones are the best way to capture it. But now you're on the forefront of a drone industry that's just starting. And so that was, yet
What's
another
really
challenge.
interesting, though, just to kind of step back a little bit, like you said, we went to this grant piece, is there's such a big difference between an exciting technology and how far that technology has to go to
Yeah,
be to really solve a real business problem, if you will, right? I mean,
very,
it really is a chasm that has to be crossed, and you think, I got it. This is just the greatest thing in the world, right?
right.
Let me give you my demo, right? And we're like, how do I play? Well, that would work for us if it boom, 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 right?
Well, we hit that all the time because think about a real example you may think would be a great one. We hit was interior decorating. I'd always say, hey, if I could take some pictures of this room and you tell me like the measurements of everything so I can automatically order what I want, like that's brilliant. Your technology should do that. And technically, our technology should do that. I mean, that is the fundamentals of what it is. And we have strong patents around some of that. But in reality, interior it doesn't work well in interior because walls are white. You can't the computer can't really see things, and in a couple of years when everyone has different cameras, it will work. But I'm like, well, first of all, what's the market for that? Like, who's really going to pay that much to have some measurements of a room? Like, even if it did work, like, is it really that great? And there's 50 players in that space, so I'm going to go sell to every one of those apps. Like, so
Right.
if it even
Yeah,
worked, was there a
I'll pay you
market?
9.95 to measure a room, right? And you sit there and go like, oh, how am I going to make money on that, right?
Well, and there's a bunch of free apps, that do it half as well, but probably good enough. And so, so there, I mean, there's 25 different things we looked at
So
that
how do
were
you
in
break out
those
of this
camps.
thing? How does it get to so now
You have to
you're on the
find a first
construction
customer.
side.
Yeah.
So who do you how do you how do you start learning, get closer to where am I going to point this?
Yeah.
Who am
Well,
I
you,
going to
you just have
call
to
on, and what am I going to say to them? What is my offer?
yeah,
What
you have to get,
problem do they have?
you have to find traction in the industry of know who, for us, since we decided drones were the way to go, like
Yeah.
it just made sense. Who are the big drone players? And Ciprari was one of the first ones in the market. And so,
But I love
um,
what you said there is that drones were brand new too, right?
I
So
mean,
this is like
yep,
brand new on top of brand new. Oh boy. Isn't that
Yeah, I know.
great? We're
I know.
interesting, but nobody's making money.
Risk on top of risk on top of risk, right?
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Um, and so in that all the drone guys are going to the hardware space, which we were very smart not to do, but we could have, right? Because drones were new, we could have been in that space. And we made the choice not to get into drone space. We got on the analytics side of drones because we actually don't care whether it's drone or mobile phone
I
or
see.
manned aircraft. And that was really important from us. It's like we don't care the source. It just practically drones make the most sense for the large assets that really where the market is. So Caspri, everyone we had going forward a little bit, we had every drone player that was doing anything in the roofing space tied into our market. Like we were the guys that could basically generate, you send us images, we'll generate a roof diagram for you. And nobody else could do that. I mean,
Yeah, but
technically it's
here's the
very hard
problem.
to do.
Here's how all that happens, right? You're the one guy who has found a place to apply these two new technologies together that can make money. Well, all these drone guys, all they want to do is fly drones, right? All they want to do is get out there and sell drones. They're in the same boat you are, so they all gravitated to you because you figured something out. You
Well,
wanted
they
somebody
were
with
definitely,
money.
yeah, they were trying to figure out how to make money in the space,
Oh
and they're
man.
all realizing, drone platforms that make people easier to fly. And then, but now everyone's looking at analytics. Like we've been the analytics players for 4 years in that space. Everybody's going to analytics because they realize there's no money anywhere else. And so we have a big leg up on everyone in the space. And but all of our partners are all trying to do the same thing as well. So
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 you
we
have you have a unique technology. So where did it eventually start to show itself? Where you started to narrow this thing down to say, okay, now I know where we need to be, and now
yeah.
it's a matter of now build a business, right? So now we know who our customers are, our potential customers are, and we know what their problems are, and now we know how to apply our solution to it. So let's get started. How did you finally get to that?
That's just, I mean, it's traction
Did
by
you get to
traction by,
that?
yeah. So I would say that part of the challenge we have is that there's no one knows where the big markets are yet, right?
Okay.
The opportunity to apply this is everywhere. Inspection in generals, the concepts is out there, it will happen. And I have absolute confidence that this is what we're doing is the right way to go. But roofing 3 years ago, everyone was getting into it and realized it was a really hard space to make money. But fortunately, it didn't matter who survived. We were behind all of them. And so we had 13 integrated in our system, and now there's really 3 making money. And they've got entrenched in the industry where they have it, they own the industry, but we're behind all of them, so it's good. And so, but the market's never going to be big enough. Like that they can't focus only on that. We can't focus only on that. So it's good though that we have a platform technology because developing it for that solution gave us the platform to apply to other applications.
Okay.
So we're in three applications right now, 3 different industries right now with the same platform. The second one is in the telecom space around towers, cell towers. And one of the challenges in the cell tower space, it's a large asset, and the owners inspect it to make sure first that any kind of structural integrity issues. It's changing all the time in terms of carriers putting things on top of the tower, and they're renting space, and the owners have to charge for that space, and they don't know what's on the tower, so that they don't know what they're renting. And the only way they can go is either have some climate, which costs thousands of dollars and very dangerous, or they have someone at the bottom looking up with binoculars trying to figure out what's on it. So it's not a very good solution. It's been known in the industry forever. Once drones became part of it, like, wow, I can fly a drone up and see it, but just organizing images is great. So ours really creates a full digital twin, a perfect replica of it, everything measured,
Oh, that's
navigating
incredible.
in a
Yeah,
super
I
great
can see
way,
that. That's
tied
like
into
an
the backend
obvious one. I
system.
feel like that makes a set. Yeah.
It is. And so we got through one of our drone partners who had a relationship in that space, we became the full analytics engine behind the biggest one in the country, and one of the
Okay.
biggest in the world. And it's one of those things where they walk in with 500 requirements saying, hey, we have the vision of what this thing needs to be. And we're like, well, our platform is built perfectly for that, but it took a year to develop. I mean,
Yeah.
truly, it
Yeah.
was we have by far the best application in the space, and we're just now expanding beyond that. And it's amazing how far ahead we are of everybody.
What was the third
But
one?
so in the facility assessment space, a lot around commercial roofs,
What
but
space?
all facility assessments or facility management.
Okay.
So commercial buildings, basically commercial buildings or campuses. And if you have a big commercial building, you can take a week or 2 to walk it and check and measure and figure out what the problems are. Fly a drone over in a couple hours and be able to have a perfect digital twin, and our AI automatically determines all the issues with it. So it's sort of that same thing of a residential roof applied to a much larger asset that's a
I
much
see.
higher value asset. similar to a cell tower, right? It's the idea of digitally creating this thing and then applying some artificial intelligence to accelerate your processes.
So do you find
And
it,
that
is this going to be a SaaS solution? Is it going to be
it
subscription
is.
based, or is it just a one-time license deal for a project, if you will?
No, it will. I mean, obviously, we want to go all SaaS, and none
Yeah.
of those industries really think like that. But it's like the cell tower world. They are going to do fly every tower once or twice a year, so it's a guaranteed minimum. So it's a SaaS with a guaranteed minimum. They pay up if they do more. So it's SaaS with a
But that is
transaction aspect
interesting
with
what you
overage.
said there, though. You're talking about you're selling to industries that don't think in subscription terms. They
You know,
think in I'm doing a project. I want all the costs associated with that project. Project's over. I'm done. Right.
yep.
So
It's general.
this is another the business model itself. You
Yeah,
got to crack the code on that too.
we do. Yeah, I pick
Man,
lots of
you are a
challenges.
good man, my friend. You got a
Yeah,
lot going on. Good thing you have a good partner, Habib.
seriously. Yeah, and think maybe the commercial, but it's like SaaS though because they can't just do it once. They have to do it over time.
Yeah,
There's
right.
value in it one time, and our platform's really good because it'll show you the differences over time. And I charge them the same each time. But there's minimums, and so we're forcing that business model in it, and they understand it. They understand where we're trying to get to as well.
No, that makes
Uh,
perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'll tell you though, is I was talking to Blake. Having invested in his fund, Technology Square Ventures. Okay, and I said, so of the companies that you have, how they doing? And he brought up you and Habib and Pointivo, and he has very high hopes for you. He thinks that you're going to be one of the big winners of his first fund. So I just do wish you the best, Dan. You've put a lot into this, and you're a smart guy, and you got great technology, and you got a great partner. So it should all work
and
out.
we've got a great team, truly an amazing team, generating
Yeah.
just amazing stuff. We have 16 patents as well, so we've really
Wow.
locked up. I think we locked up an industry. When the industry realizes what we have, it'll matter.
So why don't you end with what were those four criteria that you were looking for again?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
and the company
so
that you were going to join, one was a big
big market,
opportunity,
big market opportunity,
right?
truly innovative, get excited about every day, IP potential,
Right.
and perfect co-founder.
And it looks like
And I found all four.
you're batting 4 for 4.
I did. I was very fortunate.
You did it. Well, Dan, this has been a great time together, and I think that you could tell just think of the things that we talked about. I think they're going to help a lot of entrepreneurs out there, those that are just thinking about leaving consulting, maybe all the way to those that are on their third deal and maybe walking into really good technology. So I also like that you talked about the criteria that you looked for in the quote perfect entrepreneur. And
Yeah,
I think you hit on all of them. And it's very hard to find that person, that
very,
co-founder. I
very.
just did an interview with a couple of people that we're seeing more and more people that are coming out as we're getting these millennials are getting into their 30s now. We're seeing more and more business people like yourself who coming out of a particular industry have an idea for a really good solution back into that industry but don't have the technical expertise to
Yeah,
build the solution. How do you
yeah,
find that co-founder?
yeah. To
I
finding a
mean,
technical co-founder stuff.
it's a big one, baby.
Yeah,
So we had a discussion around that, which was pretty interesting, and a lot of the same criteria that you mentioned about the perfect co-founder certainly came to the fore. But thanks for taking so much time with me, and
I
thanks
enjoyed it,
for
Charlie. Always
giving
good.
back to
Always
the
good talking with you.
community as you always do. You're
You
great.
know, thank you for everything you do, Charlie.
All right. Well, I'm going to sign off now, but thanks.
All right.